everyone, welcome back to my Earth Friendly Kitchen. I'm Maria, your host, and today we're going to be making tamales with the family. So we have our family visiting from Colorado and also Texas. I have my sister Nicole here. She lives here. She's not visiting. Her bestie Maria, she also lives here. My mom from Colorado, Kelly. My nieces Cassidy and Millie visiting from Texas. So this is a group effort. This is something that my family has done for decades. Usually all of our family in Texas, it's our Mexican tradition. We sit around once a year and just make tamales all day long. We make all different kinds, mostly pork, sometimes chicken or beans, but today we're going to be doing a pork tamale and a chicken tamale. So I've prepped a lot, and I'll show you what I've done here in a minute, but the last thing to prep is what we call the masa, to actually what spreads into the corn husks. So we'll do that now. So we're going to start with this manteca, it's called. This is basically lard. It comes from, beef fat, essentially. You could use crisco, or you could use coconut oil. I used to make these even when I was vegan, and I used coconut oil for this part. But the manteca has its own flavor, and it comes in 1 pound boxes, similar to like stick butter when you get 4 sticks. So I just cut it in half, and you can assume that this is half a cup, just like a stick butter. So we're going to use 1 whole cup to start. We can always make more later if we run out and we still have meat. We pretty much make as many tamales as we need until everything is gone. And so we're going to just kind of mash this up a little bit. You could do this with like a hand mixer, kind of whip it if you want to, but I just like to get it into little chunks because it's going to loosen up as we get everything in here. Okay, so just like that. And then we're going to add this red chili sauce that I made. So I made this sauce last night because I used some of it to cook with the pork. And what I did was I took these dried Guajillo peppers, about 20 to 25 of them. And then I used a handful of this Arbol chili peppers, and I seeded them, destemmed them, and I boiled them down and made them soft in the water. Then I took them and I added them to a blender with onions, garlic, all of the boiled chilies, and about 2 cups of the reserved water. And I blended it down, and you get your chili sauce. So half of this was actually already added to the pork that we're going to be using, and then the other part of it is going to be added into our masa, and it's going to flavor the masa. So we're going to put about 2 cups in here, and we're going to be adding to this some vegetable broth. It's, usually I have my own scrappy broth, but today I'm run out, so I'm using, it's soup season, guys. I use a lot of broth. And we'll put about 2 cups of this in as well. This is about half of this. There's about 4 cups in this quart. And we're going to just give that a mix. Try to spread down the manteca here. And sometimes once I get the flour in, I just go in with my hands and just kind of break it all up. Because it's just easier. I mean, we do things the easy way, right? Instead of dirty other dishes. So mix that all up, and it's going to be super bright red. But once you get the Maseca in here, or the cornmeal, or corn flour, it's going to lighten it up pretty significantly. All right, so then we're going to do, let me grab a towel for my hands. We're going to add some baking powder. Now this is going to help keep the masa kind of fluffy. It's going to keep it nice and fluffy. I'm going to put about 2 teaspoons in here. Okay. Then we're going to do some salt. About another teaspoon. Okay, we're using the coarse kosher salt. Now we could always add more, right? You want to start low. Now because this also been seasoned in the pork, right? And the chicken that we're going to be doing. So you don't want to add too much because then it'll be too salty, right? And then we're going to do about 1.5 tablespoons, or really just like a heaping tablespoon of cumin to the mix. And then we're going to add our flour. So this is corn flour or corn meal. I guess some people, it's very fine. Cornmeal to me is always like a little bit grainier, you know, it's like a little bit bigger grains. And we're going to start with 4 cups. And then we'll see how it looks. You want it to be pasty, but not super thick. Like, you need it to be spreadable, you know, but I've made this quite often, so I know to start with at least 4 cups and then kind of work my way from there, since, you know, I add a little bit at a time until it gets to the consistency that I want. And then I also will taste it to make sure that it's the flavor that I want. And all these flavors are really going to be complemented in the meats, you know, that we're using. Because you're not making like, I mean, I don't know how to call it. It's like in between a batter and a dough, right? It's not really a dough, but it's not really a thin liquidy batter, but it needs to be spreadable. And if it's too much flour, then we can always add a little bit more of the broth too. So this is going to get mixed up. And like I said, sometimes I just start working it by hand to really break up. Oh my gosh, it already smells so good. To really break up that lard, because the lard is going to, we want it to penetrate all through the batter. Oh, it smells like tamales already, guys, and we haven't even cooked them yet. Oh my gosh. Now this is a fairly, you know, labor-intensive type of meal. That's why we usually do it when we have all the family together, because, you know, it takes, you know, a few hands to get this done rather quickly, unless you do it by yourself, which I've also done, you know, and it just, usually I do it in batches when that happens. So, when I'm, you know, doing it alone. But now that my sister lives here and my mom comes to visit, we like to, you know, do it when we can get together, because unfortunately none of us have been in Texas these last few years to do it with the rest of our family. So it's something that we feel helps us just stay connected in ways that, you know, we otherwise might not be able to during the rest of the year. And this is something that we did, like I said, for decades, and all of the neighbors did it. Everybody in the neighborhood used to make tamales, and, you know, we would share. The old school way we used to do it was on a fire. We would put it in like a, it looks like a, like if you think of like a witch's cauldron, we call it the paila, and then we would put it on the fire, and all of the uncles and the grandparents and the cousins, they would be outside watching the tamales cook on the fire, and then most of the aunts and cousins, female cousins and stuff, would be inside with the, you know, spreading and stuffing of the tamales. So it's just a really cool, you know, memory that we have. So this is, looks pretty spreadable. So see how that's spreading nice on my hand like that? It's actually really the consistency that we want, but we're obviously, it's not going to be on my hand, it's going to be inside of a corn husk. So that's the consistency that we want to have, but I'm also just going to taste it. Mom, will you come taste it too? We like to see if it has enough like salt in it. Like I said, the meat also has salt. Taste a little piece. You know, so we don't want to over salt it, but sometimes it needs a little extra. What do you think? A little bit of salt, or you think it's good?
Tastes like tamales.
I know, it just smells so good, right?
It does.
All right. So then we're going to take this over to the table, and we're going to, you know, pretty much have like an assembly line, which is what makes it easier for us to do. Let me grab my towel. And we're going to take this hojas. So these are called hojas, or corn husks, right? And we soak them in water. They come in a package and they're super stiff because they've been dried. And so they come, we soak them in hot water overnight, and then we soak them again this morning until we're ready to use them. And so we just take some of the masa and we spread it like this onto the hoja to make a nice thin layer. You don't want to make it too thick, And you could always take away, and then we will use all of this until it's gone, and may even need to make more if we have more meat left over. Or sometimes you can just put that in a little taco and eat it, with corn tortillas or something. A little bit of cream. So you don't want to go all the way up. You're just going to go up halfway. Okay, just like that. So nice and thin. And then you're going to take some of the meat. Now this is pork shoulder. I slow cooked it overnight, so that way it becomes super soft and shreddable. And you want to put about 2 tablespoons or so inside the husk like that. And you're going to go halfway up. And the reason we go halfway up is because when we close it, whoop, juice, then we're going to fold it in half like this. And this is the typical tamale shape. And then we lay them down. And we're going to do that pretty much until all of this is done. And then we also have a little bit of chicken here, which we're going to do where we use some rotisserie chicken that we cut up and shredded. And we added a can, well, not the whole can, about 3/4 of the can of this green enchilada sauce. You can make your own, or you can buy it ready-made, which is awesome because it helps cut down the time, obviously. These are pretty cheap that you can get them for like $1.50. It's not that much for those sauces. So for you guys, we said we're going to stuff the hojas over here. And then like we're going to spread the masa on the hojas. And then when we're done, we'll give them to you guys. And you'll stuff them with like the meat. So you'll put it like the 2 tablespoons, right, like down the row, and then just roll it in. Now we'll gauge on, like this hoja is like a little bit too big. We can actually make 2 out of this.
Okay.
But,
Probably might have been 2/3.
Yeah.
We'll see. And
What's this?
just like 2 tablespoons,
Yes,
make the long
and I've got some
line,
towels.
and then roll it and fold it like that.
Okay.
Maybe do we want to just do like somebody do that until the chicken's gone while the other one's working on the beef?
Yeah, I might as well do the until the chicken's gone because we'll use that up, and then we can always make more. What are you more comfortable with, stuffing or spreading the masa? Yeah, I mean, I think spreading the masa, we said was probably the more technical thing, that so you know how thin it should be.
It's more labor intensive,
Right,
so
and
with
we'll
more
do
of us
this-
doing that, it's easier, it's quicker to put the meat in.
Exactly.
Do you want me to put something here in case the juice goes everywhere?
Yeah, I'm gonna get some towels for you guys.
You know what, Marie? We might be able to take some of that meat out of that juice, and then if we need to add a little bit to it,
we
if it
can
looks
put
dry.
it in like a bowl.
Yeah, put it in a bowl. I just squeezed out some of the hojas so that the water's not added to it.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so we have built a tray of tamales here. We're still working on a few of the remaining ones, but I think this pot's going to have enough to at least get started. So you want to try to get yourself a nice deep pot for the tamales. Now, this has a steamer tray in it. If you don't have a pot with a steamer tray, you can use foil balls that you can put in the bottom of the pan, just cover the water. But the point of the tray is because we're going to stack the tamales facing up, meaning open side up. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. But first, I'm going to add some water. So you want to fill the pot to have enough water to have, a good amount of time to steam, because this is going to cook for about 20 to 30 minutes, maybe even 45 minutes, depending on how many tamales we fit. So I'm just going to get a little bit more water. But it's really also going to depend on the size of your pot and, how many you're doing. How thick your masa is, which, like we mentioned before, we like to keep it pretty thin, so that it evenly cooks and steams really nicely because you're folding it over. So this pot takes about 8 cups to fill it right below the steamer line. Now, a trick that you've learned when you're steaming things is you grab a couple of pennies and you put them in the bottom of the pot in the water. And if they're rattling, it tells you that there's not enough water in the pot, and you run the risk of burning the bottom of the pot or even burning what's inside because you're not steaming anymore. It's just there's no water there to steam. So if they start to rattle significantly, they'll rattle a little bit, but they're not gonna, they shouldn't be, shaking in the pot too bad. So this part is a little bit tricky. We're gonna start here. I'll start on this side so you guys can see. Now we like to put the folded ends against the wall, and we're gonna stand them up straight. And it's okay if some of them are taller than others. This is going to stack really nicely, and unevenness is expected, right? Because the hojas are different sizes. So we're just gonna keep doing this until the pot is full. And, something that we used to do, again, when I was younger, or, family tradition, this was done in a really big type of cauldron that was placed on top of a fire. And my great-grandmother was the keeper of the cauldron, or the paila. She was the only one that was really allowed to do this part because she liked to be the one to make sure that it stacked evenly so that they cooked perfectly. And she would be the one, and then the uncles, her sons, would go and pick it up because it's heavy. And when I'm telling you the cauldron, I'm saying like 3 times the size of this pot. It was huge. And we actually used to have 2. Well, we had one and the neighbors had one. And so we would alternate our weekends on who did their tamales on which weekend. So they would usually do the first weekend of December, and we would do ours the second weekend of December, so we could use each other's cauldrons because we needed them. Because while one was cooking on the fire, the other would be getting stuffed with the ones that we were making, because my family is large. I'm talking, when my great-grandmother passed away about 15 years ago or so, now a little bit more actually, at that time there was over 150 of us, and so we used to each take 4 or 5 dozen per family home, let alone the amount that we ate throughout the day as we were doing the tamale making. So it was a ton, and it was fun. We did it all day long. So this is obviously not nearly to that amount, but there's not that many of us here today, so not as many. So, but trust me, they'll go. We will eat them all. So we're gonna have this till we're full, and this is actually perfect. I might not even be able to fit these last 4 in, but we're gonna try, and you can see perfect actually. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how perfect that was. So you can see how this looks now. Nice and stacked all together like this. We're going to cover it, and we're going to take it to the stove and turn it on. And we're going to turn this on like a medium to high heat. You're steaming, right? So the water's going to be boiling a little bit. And you can hear in this pot that there's a little bit of a rattle, because the pennies are in there too. Well, these are the chicken ones that we're doing. I went ahead and started these already because there weren't that many, about 16 of those in there. But you can see how they're nice and steaming. So, we're going to have those first. And then these will go. And when these are done, we have another pot that we have here. I don't even know if we have enough tamales to fill that whole pot, but this is going to feed our whole family tonight for a nice dinner. And, we'll come back when it's all ready for you guys to see. Okay? See you in a bit. Bye. Okay, so we are done. All of our tamales are finished cooking. It took about an hour or so for them all to really be completed. We had multiple pots going, and it turns out we made about 4 to 5 dozen tamales here. So these are all the pork that we made, and then we used about a 4-pound pork shoulder for this. And then over here we have the chicken that we got from the rotisserie chicken. We wound up making some bean and cheese as well because we had a little bit more masa left over than we had some meat. So we just improvised and added some bean and cheese. So the tamale comes out wrapped like this. Remember, it was stood up in the pot. And to unwrap it, you just pull the corn husk away. And because it's steamed, that masa or that dough, it comes out looking just like that. And inside, when we break it apart, you'll see the meats. And we're going to do a little taste test here. Make sure everything came out okay. Let's see. Yep. So good. It's great. Perfect. So, and we just, you can have, literally, we could probably eat a dozen of these to ourselves, but we try not to because there's, they're a little calorie high, but that's okay. Holiday foods are supposed to be like that, and this just really brings us back to our family traditions. So we're grateful that you joining us with our family visiting for the holidays and making this family tradition with us. I hope you try it in your home. Maybe it's not this large of a scale, but if you have a crew, get them together and enjoy some time around the table with one another. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
So when did you usually do, like, any occasion or?
No, my family did it the second weekend of December. So it was before
to
Christmas.
receive, like, to have to celebrate the Guadalupe? Like
It's just that it was it was the winter time and it was before Christmas and people were getting ready and they wanted to have tamales for Christmas and stuff. And then the neighbors would come and they would come and go all day long. The cousins were outside playing and the men were outside smoking or drinking their beer and watching the fire once the tamales went in and the women were inside. It was so funny with my family because the women loved to be inside and they would be gossiping, and if a man came in, they would stop their conversation and look at him and they would like
Cassie, do you want to
just leaving. One time when we were done at the end of the night, because people would wrap up dozens, and we would wrap them by the dozens in foil, and they would go home with them after spending a couple hours with us. So everybody got to take some home. And one night,
Yeah, we would take
We were
5-6 dozen home, depending on how big your
finishing
family
what we
was.
were done, there was, without counting the ones that we ate all day long, and then the ones that walked away during the day, there was 120 dozen that night still that we left, that we were able to split between everyone.
Yeah.
And then as everyone got older, the ants got crankier.
So we made less and less.
And then they were like, if you don't contribute to making them, you don't get to eat any.
Well, because it was hard work and they wanted to do it, but it was just like some people would just enjoy
Show
the
up.
fruits of everyone else's labor.
But it was a great memory, right?
Oh gosh, for decades, boys and kids would be outside playing football or something, and
Drinking beer.
And then when the cousins got older, they'd be drinking beer.
but now the cousins want to continue. It's important to the cousins because they grew up with that, and like my mother and her generation, they're too tired because it's an all-day thing or 2-day thing. So now the cousins,
Not as many people that do.
yeah, there's not as many. So
Right.
now the cousins are taking over. But and then our children, my cousins and their children, like my niece, my nieces in Houston and Florida, my daughters, they want to be able to still continue to do that.
That's great, because in the case of my family, we
Like that?
we help,
that's great.
but we help like putting the tamales together like now. But it never got into the point of us actually being in charge of learning the recipes.
Well, it was hard because they wanted to do it. They were always in control and then to share their knowledge. And then when my grandmother finally was at the point where she didn't want to do the baila anymore, where it was too much for her.
She only showed
They wanted my mother, who was the oldest of her 12 children, they wanted her to do it. And my mother refused to take the place of her mother. maybe she just felt, I don't know, I don't want to take my mother's place. And they said, but you're not. So,
I didn't know that.
yeah, she didn't. And so, then they said, well, then the next one, but like nobody wanted to take her place. Let's see here, we just make them just a little bit thinner.
Okay, like this.
Yeah, just like, because you'll have enough when you roll it. So I think maybe like a tablespoon and a half. It just depends. But then
She probably also felt like she didn't want to like she had big shoes to fill too.
she did. She did. That's exactly why she didn't want to replace her mother. And so
So these two. Yeah, so just because we'll put them on a different.
then when they chose Uncle Steve, when she chose Uncle Steve to do it, he was so honored. Yeah, he was like, because he watched everything, and she appreciated that he really, she understood his appreciation for this and this tradition for the family.
Right.
So he became the keeper of the paila.
Gilbert.
Steve, Uncle Steve.
Oh yeah.
So he was just like, wow, this is an honor for me. And then we always had one of the aunts going by like a drill sergeant. She would go and she would inspect what we were doing at the table in the living room. You're putting too much meat, or no, you need to put more. But everybody always had a good time talking and just hanging out.